Hey, it's great to see everyone here for another GRIP-Birkman Coaches Cafe, as we are going to be talking about the subject of thriving. Team wellness is the emphasis here, as we are trying to find ways, practical ways even, that we can both look after our own health, our own emotional, physical, spiritual wellness, and also thinking about corporate wellness on the team. What do we do to help the team to be a healthy team, thriving, so that we can be more effective? And I hope you were able to catch the article that is online right now at GRIP-Birkman.com/thriving. If you have not had a chance to look up the article to see it coming in the newsletter, you can look that up right now at GRIP-Birkman.com/thriving. It is live. I've got it up now. And you can kind of follow along with us even as we work through some of the points of that article. Just to kind of summarize real quickly, thinking a lot about burnout and how many people that we encounter have either suffered from burnout, perhaps are burnout right now, or they might be on the road to burnout. And many times that coming from the stress of operating outside of our strengths, operating perhaps too much in the flesh, or having too much put on us that we feel like it's a load that's just heavier than we can bear. And so we go and we go and we go until we have burned the candle at both ends, and then it starts to burn in the opposite directions, and we realize there's nothing more to burn, that we are really and truly burned out. And thinking about some of the statistics that we have gathered from other studies that are out there, like the study from Indeed, that would say that 61% of remote workers and 53% of on-site workers are finding it more and more difficult to unplug from work after hours. And that sad statistic that only 6% of virtual workers say they never check emails after hours. That's to say that 94% of us check email at any time of the day, maybe even at the dinner table, and even when we were saying prayers with our children at night. Oops, there's the email. Or last thing I do before I turn off the light, I'm even in bed. Have any of you been guilty of this? If so, don't raise your hand. But have you been guilty of even checking email in bed, either right before you turn off the light or even before you turn on the light early in the morning? And if so, then we want to talk a little bit about how to get out of those kind of habits and what can we do to help people to avoid burnout. Our conversation won't be just about burnout as we talk about, though, what are the signs of a healthy, thriving team where the team members are healthy and they are helping each other to be healthy, which results in a healthy team. And you'll see in the article that there are some specific points, some descriptions offered there of thriving teams. What does it mean to be a thriving team? Number one, members of a thriving team have learned how to take care of themselves. Number two, members of a thriving team establish clear boundaries and keep a healthy work-life balance. Then members of a thriving team have learned to optimize their use of resources. Members of a thriving team connect their individual values with the values of the team. Members of a thriving team give priority to maintaining spiritual health. Members of a thriving team regularly affirm each other's strengths and contributions. And members of a thriving team take time together outside of work. So those are the main points that we're looking at. When we're talking about how to take care of themselves, we're talking about being that each one thinking more highly of others than we do of ourselves, from Philippians 2:4, as we are talking about watching out for each other. And a healthy team, team members can call out each other and even say, hey, it seems to me that, and we can talk about how also to protect each other, speaking up for each other when we might see someone being overloaded, overburdened. At the same time, maintaining clear boundaries that help us to have a healthy work-life balance, which means that the team is trying to be holistic in our approach to health. We are concerned with our physical health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, and our psychological health as we are watching out for each other. And that might mean also trying to work on rhythms of work, rest, and spiritual renewal, not only on an individual basis, but also on a team basis. As we talk about maybe encouraging teams to take soul care retreats together, where they're building one another up, and finding other how to build up some kind of a rhythm where we are perhaps not always on a retreat, but at the same time, we're not always just at work. And what about home time? What about rest time? What about family time? We get into that rhythm that we need. And then optimizing our use of resources, how we need to find that balance between workloads and priorities, between perfection and good enough, between time spent thinking and time spent acting, and watching out for that one team member that might be overloaded. And every team, every church, every organization, the people who get things done get more things put on them because they're the ones who get things done. You know, that 80-20 Pareto principle, the 20% that get 80% of the work done. And what do? We heap more and more on that 20%, those people who are the doers, the get it done people, we heap more and more on them until they burn out. And what do we do to try and help them find that kind of balance that they need as we bear one another's burdens and optimize our resources, tap into that person who might not get the job done 100% perfectly the way we might have thought it ought to be done, but they might get it done, 60 or 80% well enough, good enough, that we ought to let them run with it, let them have a room for growth perhaps. And then the whole issue of values. You're going to see some tools coming out really soon about helping us to evaluate our team values and personal values and how they fit in with that. So how do we help team members see how their values nest in the overall values of the team and the values of the organization? How do their values line up? Or perhaps if they do not line up and there's a misfit here with their values and their sense of calling, how do we help them to find perhaps the right place that they need to be, which is perhaps not where they are right now? And that's a really hard one for us to be a healthy team and able to handle that in a healthy way. And then maintaining spiritual health, where Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, in Matthew 6:33. And how do we help teams to give priority to spiritual development and soul care, which does not necessarily mean that that's what takes up all of our time or even the majority of our time, but that it is a priority for us, that it's part of our conversations, that we are actually investing time and resources into helping people maintain their spiritual health, and teams doing that together to maintain our spiritual health. Looking from that, then, that ties right into the idea of helping one another to really be maximizing our strengths, affirming those strengths in each other. And we know that with GRIP-Birkman team builds, affirmation is always a very important, the most important part perhaps of what we do with a team build. That at the end of every gathering, we affirm one another so that we can make sure that people feel appreciated for who they are and what they have to contribute to the team. At the same time, remembering that caution, be careful that those are genuine affirmations that are really for the individual and not just the generic things that people might discard then as not really being a true affirmation. And then finally, getting together for work getting together that is outside of the work environment. When we spend some time together, just fellowshipping, going out for a meal, perhaps playing games, perhaps doing something, an adventure together, anything like that, where we are doing some team building as we are not just at work. Keeping in mind that the definition of fun varies from person to person. And for example, I'll start off with this one. I coached a couple of guys who were both very high physical energy. They were both go, 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 red kind of guys all during the week. And on Friday afternoon, one of them said to the other, let's go shoot some hoops. They've been going 90 miles an hour together, running neck and neck. And he says, let's go shoot some hoops to blow off some steam. And the other guy says, what steam? I am out of steam. I just want to go crash on the couch and watch football all weekend. I'll see you Monday morning. And both of them were surprised at each other. The one guy saying, hey, I thought he was so full of energy that he would really love to go, play basketball this weekend or tonight. And the other guy saying, how in the world could he have any energy left after working like that all week long? It's a matter of what would refuel them. They had very different needs. So watch out for that. You might have a team leader who says, let's go on a nature walk. And some of the people saying, I just suffer from hay fever whenever I get out, on a nature walk. And somebody might want to just sit around and sip coffee together one-on-one. And that's their idea of really having fun. And then be careful also that you think about the real needs of the people and not just what you think their needs are, expressing those. And so with that, we have some evaluative statements that come at the end of the article. And here in our conversation live, we're going to talk a little bit about some of those at the end of our conversation. But I'd like to open up the mics now for whatever of this seemed important to you, what stood out for you. And you might want to even talk about some of your personal experiences where you maybe were working with a team that was very good at this, or you might have been working at a team that had some really horrible failures at some of these, and you'd like to talk about that as well. We can keep things as anonymous as possible when we're talking about those experiences, but share with me what stood out to you about this whole concept of thriving as a team.
Well, Larry, the first thing that popped out for me was my church planting experience. I was parachute dropped into another state, not near my tribe, with my wife and teen daughter, and raced like a nut for 5-6 years, and then had a physical collapse. This whole conversation just reminds me that team ministry is vital. The solo, do-it-yourself, not connected person is in jeopardy right from the get-go. So this is huge.
Now tell us more about that, Les. What happened next?
My ended up in with the doctor with wires strapped all over me. Then he sat me down in his office and he says, Les, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just stupid. I'm paying you to tell me I'm stupid. And so my wife took me away. I just walked away from everything, took a vacation, came back, set a new pace, was very much more intentional of creating teams. And the church thrived after that. It was actually good for the church for me to fall down. Doctor was right. I was stupid. So yeah, I have been aggressive with building teams ever since.
Share the load, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
This conversation got me thinking about sort of the relationship between burnout and beliefs. And it's a heavy story, but I think it's really quite funny. There's a guy in my church who is a professor of New Testament at a local seminary, and is actually going through some really significant doubts about faith in general. And he feels this incredible burden to continue equipping pastors, even as he, as he sort of struggles with the tenets of Christianity. But regardless, he's working 90 or 100 or plus hours a week. And we kind of stopped, and I told him, and I said, like, Luke, like, what do you believe? Like, if Christianity really is this highly evolved and mostly functional sociology not rooted in the truth, then, like, why are you working so hard, man? But also, if the gospel's really true and Jesus really said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, why are you working so hard, man? Like, it's kind of like either place that he lands on, it's there's something about what he's believing about the world and about himself that's pushing him to burnout, and it's not supported by the truth. I think we who claim Christ as our own maybe do a disservice to the truth that exists in our lives or our witness to the others when we act like Jesus' yoke isn't easy and Jesus' burden isn't light. So anyways, that like challenged me as well to think like, what's really the point? In my own Reformed tradition, we talk about like the chief aim of people is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And I see a lot of people doing church ministry who aren't enjoying God that much. So yeah, I think it's got me thinking anyways about looking at the sort of our root beliefs that cause this kind of overwork, that cause this silo thinking, and that cause this burnout.
Hey, Rodney, I think you were also wanting to contribute.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me as I looked down the list was the next to last item. Members of a thriving team regularly affirm one another's strengths and contributions. That jumped out at me because I think especially in my work and the people that I interact with during COVID, I think a lot of people have not been thriving. And I think many of them needed more affirmation from significant others. And maybe even those that could have been giving affirmation needed affirmation about their role. So that one just really jumped out at me, that because of COVID, I think, Steve mentioned siloing, and we, in our company, we're trying to eliminate silos, but I think COVID created a lot of silos that we didn't see coming. And so people are just feeling, I think, alone and not that effective. And so they really need that affirmation, because given what they have to work with, they are still effective, but they don't feel it, because compared to 2019 and before, had a lot of activity possible that encouraged them in how effective they were. And all of that was gone, I think, with the COVID restrictions and all. And I'm overseas, so I don't know how it is in the US, but I've really felt that over here, that wondered a lot how many people are just kind of drying up because they don't feel effective and don't feel affirmation.
And I'm curious, Rodney, Steve, the same, I think, for both of you. Do you think that whole thing of COVID has isolated us so that if we're working virtually, working from home, that there's not as much opportunity for the team, or particularly team leaders, to actually see us at work, except for those brief encounters that we have just in the little thumbnail that we see of you whenever we get together virtually?
I think that's probably true. We don't see them at work, but we also, the face-to-face in the same room affirmations that we took for granted, those have not existed for many of our people. And we thought, okay, well, I can still affirm you, virtually, it works for a little while, but it's not the same, I don't think.
Yeah, I
That's-
found myself missing the like the leisure time, like 15, 20 minutes having coffee with somebody you're at work with. And also like the ways in which with Zoom you can meet until 9:59 until your 10 o'clock meeting starts. Whereas pre-Zoom, you had this nice few-minute break to maybe walk down the hall and kind of decompress, or say you had to get in your car. Like Zoom just takes away a little bit of that margin, you know? Makes it tough.
I work with missionaries and have definitely seen a lot of burnout in the past 2 years. And I think certainly COVID has played a part in that. But I really like what you said, Larry, about thriving might look different for each person, for each style. Some like to really physically exert themselves and burn off a lot of steam that way, and others would prefer to sit down and drink a cup of coffee. I think being aware of what helps us to thrive in our situations can be really helpful.
Are you finding it more challenging to do the one anothering in a virtual environment?
Larry, I would say we're missing out on that liminal space where you naturally come into contact with people, even if it's unplanned. You catch each other in a corridor, you stand in the doorway, you happen to cross paths in the parking lot, you stand and chat for a bit. And it seems like those missed opportunities, we don't realize how those add a sense of well-being, or even information, or a chance to affirm, whatever it might be, or just to tell a story, just to share something that's maybe work or personal. And then you do that with people who work at a distance, and you have impeded travel. You have all these different restrictions, all the different requirements for travel. At some point, some people say, forget it. I don't want to do this, then that, then this, so I could do something that used to be simple and enjoyable. The fun's been sucked out of it before I've even zipped up my bag. And it does. There's a cumulative effect of taking away of natural or expected community. And I think we do as best we can using medium like this. But even as soon as you click off, it's like, I would have really loved to just sit across the table with Larry and talk today versus halfway around the world. But that's not possible.
I've got some frequent flyer miles though, Shannon.
Yeah, and again, this is where I go. Some of these relationships they truly are distance relationships, and we know that's what it's typically going to be. But when there was an expectation for some that weren't supposed to be that way or hadn't been that way, it really is tough. But I'd like to put one twist on this article. I think you could almost rewrite this and make it a thriving couple, and these same truths would absolutely fit. And you could read this as husbands and wives, and it would be like, wow, honey, we got some things to work on. We haven't been doing this, or we've lost some of this, maybe through COVID or through other circumstances, because this is just really good interpersonal dialogue and interpersonal needs addressing. So whoever wrote this, I think they could really easily tweak this and say this would be a great litmus test for couples, even to see how they're teaming together.
Yeah. And when we think of the couple as a team anyway, to say, hey, just about anything that we write about teaming could apply, couldn't it?
Sure.
That's interesting, Shannon, because I can't tell you how many times I have talked to couples who, for example, going overseas and working as expats overseas, and they're going to have to work as a unit, a couple now working together. And they say, we've never had to work together before, and we're not sure how that's going to work out, being with each other all the time and having to share in ministry and dividing responsibilities and seeing that as an opportunity for conflict. To be honest, Susan and I look at that and we say, well, what is marriage if it's not, partnership where we're working together to make this relationship and build a family? It seems foreign to us, but we recognize that there are other people who have always worked independently and then they've been able to come home, and that's been different. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with that, just that it reminds me of that challenge that that couples often have of realizing this is a relationship we do have to keep working at. If we don't keep investing in this as a team, then we are going to drift apart in our relationship. We may discover we've got different values that are not jiving, and we've got different objectives that are not perhaps compatible. And yeah, we can see couples drifting apart that way. So I think it's a great point that you're making.
One of the things with this, thinking about the team and together and siloing and separating because of the pandemic, I think sometimes we just are not creative enough. I remember in the early months of our lockdown where we were advised not to go anywhere and to definitely stay away from people. I was carrying around 2 lawn chairs in my trunk. I was doing front yard visits.
Oh, yeah.
Not just with my parishioners, but with pastors. I would swing by their house and I'd set up a lawn chair in their front yard. They'd sit on their porch. We would chat, standing outside of first floor windows at nursing homes. Sometimes just being a little more creative, we can fix some of this stuff or at least put patches on it to get us through. The number of pastors in my circle that are still just not running at even close to full tilt anymore. They just never recovered. They just weren't creative enough to figure out how to do something that felt normal. And almost everything on this list here, we can duplicate in some creative fashion so that we can do it even under stressful circumstances.
Yeah, because the whole definition of thriving does not change regardless of whether we're working virtually or in person, does it? That's a good point, Les, and trying to find the creative ways to do that. In the early days of COVID-19, I saw a surge of creativity. People finding new ways to get together, choirs, discovering that they could beat the latency issues and have Zoom choirs, even with 100 voices or more on a choir that could do recordings. And the humor that was coming out related to COVID showed a lot of creativity in people as they were facing this. But as people began to realize this is going to be a long-term thing, they started losing their drive for creativity. And we've kind of hit a slump now. But wherever we are right now, we still need to be creative in how we address these deficiencies or this emptiness that we still feel with our relationships. You're right about that, Les. How can we pour fuel on the creativity at this stage of the game? And not just now, but thinking about for the future as well.
Let me throw another factor into this, not to derail your question, but I think also, for me at least, the expectation, the realistic expectations I was working under kept shifting faster than I could be creative.
Okay.
And so I had some creative ideas, but certain countries with their border restrictions, et cetera, they nixed my great ideas because I still couldn't get there. And so I think that's been one of the challenges with COVID, at least for me, is my expectations have continued to need to be readjusted to reality because reality keeps changing as far as what's possible and what's not. Personally, the first couple of months of lockdown, I thought, okay, this is going to be over in a few weeks. But then after 2 months, and I'm still pretty restricted, I was getting desperate. And so some friends and I, we found an illegal way to play tennis because the parks weren't open, but we found a private court. And from that point, my ability to thrive really increased. And then parks were finally open. I mean, tennis places were. But until that time, boy, my outside score is very high. And so I just needed some outside time and I wasn't getting it. And I was getting pretty desperate. But I think if I'd have known early on, okay, here's the box you're in, figure it out. But the box kept shifting. And I don't know if others face that, but that was a challenge for me. But I appreciate what you said, Les. Yeah, creativity is great. And I had some great plans, but then before I could even implement them, the rug was pulled out like, you can't do that because of this. You can't get there.
Yeah, Rodney, we come back to that whole thing of the VUCA that we talked a little bit about early on with the COVID pandemic. That idea that the situation is volatile, there is immense uncertainty, but there is immense complexity that comes out of this, and there is ambiguity. That things are ambiguous all the time, and we can't, it's like trying to nail Jello to the wall kind of thing. And so with the rules constantly changing as new information would come, and the rules that we might have looked at 12 months ago compared to right now simply won't fit because it is not today's reality. One of the things that we started to approach with this particular concept of thriving that we might also expand on is the idea that we need something concrete, I guess I would say. And there was another great thought as you were talking there that I really wanted to bring up. And that was the concept of resilience, that if we have built resilience, then we can adapt to the changes. But if we do not have resilience, then it takes fewer changes to put us into stress. The more resilience that we have, the more change we can adapt to. That may not be a good English sentence, but the easier it is for us to adapt to changes when we have built resilience. It's kind of like we've been weightlifting ahead of time, so when a heavy load comes, we can lift it. If we have not been building up resilience, if we've not been building up our resilience, then what happens is we build up our resistance. We resist the changes. We fight against them. We don't like this reality that is ours. And we wish things were the way they were. And, I hate to tell you this, but I keep hearing people saying, I'll be so glad when things get back to the way they were. Well, guess what? It ain't going to happen. It's going to be different from here forward. And so let's talk about this reality and how do we thrive in this reality that we're living in right now? And what do we need to do right now?
Larry, I'll jump in on that resilience. I've seen very clearly people that arrived 20 to 10 years ago on the mission field in my area. If they were doing well, then COVID's just one of those things. It's annoying. It's in your way, etc. But we'll figure it out. It's not gonna crush us. But persons who arrived in 2019 and maybe their first touch of overseas work was in a highly organized, highly empowered volunteer experience. And then they show up as an individual joining a team and everything's just not functioning like it had been, even in that, especially not in that volunteer experience. Those persons, I'm watching them really struggle to get through this and to think, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't happening. And we've got families that you see that, and you see it in their eyes even before they open their mouth, that's just where they're at. And it's been tough in that whatever you want to call it, grit, resilience, tenacity, little bit of callousness, whatever it is that you've built up over time, it's being tapped. And now I'm beginning to see the veterans start to wane a little bit because it keeps extending. But they did much better through 2019 and 2020. But now that we're at the end of 2021, I'm even seeing those persons starting to, those reserves of resilience are getting low. So this is an apropos topic today for sure.
Yeah. Boy, and wasn't that the word of the year? Resilience, sustainable resilience, especially. I've listened to more podcasts and read more articles about sustainable resilience than I have in a long time. And it's true. It's really true. I mean, and I think especially in the area of missions, because for so many situations, it's a process, and it can be a long process when you're going in and maybe reaching out to unreached people, and it's planting seeds and waiting to see which ones grow, and it's just, you have to really have a long-term mentality to cope with that. Well, depending on where you sit on the Birkman, that can either be a impossible situation for you, or you may just get really fired up and get creative and able to cope with it and think of new options, new ways of presenting the gospel. But more often than not, I'm noticing a lot of folks are really struggling with just that long-term perspective.
Debbie, are you seeing some of the same kind of things with the folks you're working with?
Yeah. Exactly what you guys were talking about. Those that came over in 2019 that bumped right into COVID restrictions, it's really hard for them. Being back here in the States, being part of our organization that is also changing on top of COVID, I've seen a lot of stress. And I was thinking, as you all were talking, that isn't this a picture of stress? Because we all started out with COVID thinking, yeah, it'll be done in 2 weeks, maybe a couple months. And so, yeah, we put our resilience hat on and move forward. But now it's been 2 years. And at least for me, I came home in 2019, and even just the stress of coming back here. I mean, just the stress added upon stress. I see myself very stressful. And what do? We pull back. Some people pull back. Some people lose their creativity during that time. And so, yeah, I can see why a lot of what's happening is because of just that ongoing stress of it's not going to go back to normal. And we're hoping that it is. So I didn't know, I wanted to throw that out just to see if you guys see that the stress level is also putting us down in our stress reactions, because we don't have the opportunity to let go of that stress like we've known. But there's a lot of creativity. I mean, when we were overseas, we did the lawn chair thing, went outside. We actually even played games online because we couldn't play games anymore. We all sat outside and we all played games on our computer. It was just, so there was a lot of creativity at the very beginning, but yeah, you're right. I don't see that anymore.
So let me ask a question. How can we leverage GRIP-Birkman when we're working with a team? How can we use the insights that they might be getting from their reports and their team building to address these issues specifically with the team that maybe, they're not necessarily falling apart, but they just need some strengthening, and they need some practical steps that they can take as a result of some of the things that we're doing in those team builds that will last with them and help them to build that resilience. What are some things we can do as GRIP-Birkman coaches to help them get to some practical steps?
I think really focusing on our needs. I think we think of needs as these are the giant negatives, and we want to focus on the good, fun stuff, positives. But the needs are really positive if they're addressed. We can prevent failure. We can prevent burnout by making sure that needs aren't being missed and that we're working to make sure that they're met. One of the things when I read through the article, that very first point you made, members of thriving teams have learned how to take care of themselves. Well, those last 4 words, that's where I think many of us fall down. We don't take care of ourselves. Because every one of these points in this article are all relational, connectional. But there is a part of taking care of less that only less can do. Mm-hmm. And if I haven't learned how to do that, I'm done right from the beginning, because I'm probably not going to be able to help anybody else either. Now, that doesn't mean I take care of myself isolated from everybody else, but I'm responsible. And, I'm just wondering if, even at the level of being aware that I have needs, am I actually focused on those enough that they don't hurt me?
And certainly unmet needs, unmet expectations contribute to our stress, don't they? And this is not the way I thought it was going to be. As Shannon, you were talking about people coming to the field. This is not what I was expecting, which I've never known any missionary to get overseas and say, oh, this is exactly the way I thought it would be. But at the same time, it's adding that other factor to it, that isolation, or I'm not able to get out and really mingle with people. It just multiplied or magnified the unmet expectations, didn't it?
Yeah, I think about, if we talk about needs, as like, the way we expect things to be, or kind of our preferred environment. Makes me wonder how we can encourage teams to recreate kind of their environment in a way that does meet their needs. I mean, I think about the start of COVID for myself. I was going through a separation and an eventual divorce, which was kind of doubly isolating. However, my brothers and I got together to play board games online. And the truth is I spent more time with my brothers 300 miles away than I had in the previous 10 years, because COVID had given us like some creativity to recognize my needs for people, but then recreate a world that did meet my needs. And thanks to their creative thinking, I was real blessed by that. And I wonder if that language might be helpful for teams who, for whom the environment's really changed the last couple of years.
Thinking about the way we think things ought to be, but how that affects our ability to thrive. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure who said something about the older generation of missionaries seem to be doing a little better with the resilience and bouncing back from what was happening around them. I think that whole idea of the more resilient you are, the more options you have at hand to think about. Oh, I used to run when I got stressed. What can I do now? What's another option that I could try? And whatever it is, just having at least some options that you can do to get to find life-giving relationships. Do I need to talk to somebody online? Do I need to read a book about a certain topic? But having those options, I think, is a huge part of being resilient.
Yeah, I agree with Gail. And I was thinking also that just to sit down with someone who seems like they're in their stress mode and look at their needs and say, okay, before COVID, how are these things met? And how many of your normal activities to meet your needs are really out of the picture now? So realizing, okay, those are not there. So that need that can't be met because of whatever, how can you have that need met in a new way, to brainstorm with them and help them creatively think? But first is to recognize, okay, I can still do this. So this is meeting that need, but this, I can't do that at all. So what are you going to manufacture or come up with that would help you get there?
And don't
And-
forget about
and
looking at
the
their
other thought I had
interests.
from the Berkman map was the further a person's stress need area is from their usual, the more they need to figure out how those needs are going to be met to get to their usual. Because
Yeah.
if they move very much, they might not notice it, but people that move a lot, wow, they need to figure out those needs and how they're going to meet them.
So as a coach, asking those questions. So what are some things you can do? What are some different things that you might be able to do that, or do a different way? What are some things that you did before that you could continue to do? What are some things you maybe used to do a long time ago that you could start doing perhaps a different way, but help people to think through their creativity? And if they're still stuck, do you know anybody else that might, who did you used to do this with? Have you thought about contacting them to see what they're doing right now? How are they surviving? Anything that you can do as a coach to help them get to some kind of a practical application. Right. Doug, anything else you wanted to add to that? I think I saw your head bobbing up and down.
Oh, guys, just agreeing and enjoying the conversation. I'm glad actually I'm almost done my projects, and so I'm glad I was able to join today.
Oh yeah, it's good. Garrett, was there anything else you wanted to add either?
I had a student, college student, who at the beginning of the pandemic said, "Oh, good, this will cut off dead weight in the church," and I thought that was a little. It was a pretty bold statement, but right away our leadership team, I was pretty impressed with them. It's a campus ministry, and they really set out to see what could be gained out of this trial, and I think that the burnout that I've felt is trying to encourage the church to do that, and to say, hey, there's some good that's coming out of this. Maybe it's caused you to rethink and slow down a little bit and refocus on the things that are most important. And so inside our campus ministry, that's been really great, and our students have thrived in that, and I think a lot of them really have grown. In the church, though, I've noticed that there was quite some time where people were just lamenting and not embracing, and I think that's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that some in the church are not embracing a trial. Nobody really wants to hear Paul's words, rejoicing in tribulation, or James' words, consider it pure joy when you face trials, right? But if that is a command and a promise, then I think, wow, let's embrace it, and let's move forward with this and capitalize on the opportunity afforded by this to be able to connect in different ways. I know that for our campus ministry, we just met a ton of people that we would have never met before because campus was closed down, and there's still the regulars on the public campus that were just lost in the crowd on normal semesters, but they were there. They're not students, they're just skateboarding around campus, and there were some really cool things that came out of that. And sure, I miss indoor soccer. I miss some of the things that I really enjoyed doing, but my kids have more time with me, and we were able to get some things done during this time that we wouldn't have gotten done because we were just so busy constantly. So that's just what's been. I've really appreciated everyone's comments this morning.
Well, to close us out, we had some evaluative questions that were at the end of the article. 3 that are focused on the individual, and 3 that are focused on the team. As we think about the whole concept of moving from I to we, as I think about my own health, what am I doing? Am I able to get good exercise? Am I watching my diet? Am I doing the right things? What are the things I can do to maintain my mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being? And am I getting enough rest? Am I staying up at night watching movies after I've been watching the screen all day? Or am I really getting, the rest that I need to get? And then some evaluative questions to help a team start thinking. This is for individuals to answer the questions, how they are looking at their team, and then to get dialogue started about it. Are team members feeling the freedom, and are they expected to take care of themselves, both body, mind, and soul? Are they encouraged to take regular time away and disconnect? Are they given resources and time to go on a personal soul retreat or on a team retreat to take some extended vacation and really and truly disconnect? And when they do disconnect, are there systems in place to help cover each other without overburdening someone else? To at least cover the minimum while someone is out. Does someone else know how to do my job, kind of thing? And then finally, with my team, the spiritual, physical, emotional health of team members, is that marked by our vitality, our joy? Are we seeing fruitfulness in the team? And are we really and truly working together in loving unity? Would that be a hallmark of our team? And if it is not, then what are some of the things we could help a team to start dialoguing about what needs to change? And using what we're learning from our GRIP-Birkman team building to move them in that direction. It's all about getting them started in a conversation, which we've always talked about. How do we get them started in this conversation that can then continue to see change, positive change in their team so that they can be more fruitful? Well, here we are, top of the hour again, guys. Anybody have a last closing comment of wisdom you'd like to share with the group before we close off?
That we haven't touched on is, I've noticed during COVID, people need to give greater grace to each other, but also sometimes the hardest person to give grace to is yourself, because your expectations of yourself are not being met.
I love that as our final word. Give
Amen.
Grace to each other and give grace to yourself. And that's not easy, but give yourself permission to do some things that will be investments for the long haul. Don't be like that guy that said, burn yourself out for Jesus. And then all you do end up doing is you just end up being a burned out, washed out, useless piece of char. Instead, go for the long haul. Let's go for the long win so that we can keep being productive for as long as the Lord gives us time here. And that's what we're all about, isn't it? Trying to help people discover how to build that unity in the body of Christ so more people can know Jesus. And that will result in much fruit, which means our Father will be glorified because of it. And we'll just be found to be his faithful, obedient servants. Lord bless you, folks, and thanks for joining us again. Bye-bye now.